for things. And that same Allah who said, have taqwa of me, said, have taqwa of the relationships that are created by blood. And a relationship between a child and his or her grandparents is a relationship of blood. You don't get to cut it. You don't. There's a fellow who, got married, and his wife is not getting along well with his parents, right? So they have had whatever tensions they've had and exchanges, and mean words have been shared. Not talking about who's right and who's wrong. That's not even the point, right? And he, the couple gets pregnant, and she has the baby, and she puts a rule on her husband: my baby will not see your parents. There's absolutely no way I will let my baby see your parents. That's what she tells her husband. And because she just gave birth and she's traumatized and she's gone through a lot of stress and all of that, he doesn't want to stress her out even more. So he listens to her, and for 4 months or more, they don't see the baby. The grandparents, that's their first grandchild, by the way, they don't see their baby, their grandchild. And they see him for the first time after 4 months. And this person is describing the situation and talking about how broken they are inside, that they don't want to do wrong by their wife and they don't want to do wrong by their parents, and they're stuck in the middle. And what I wanted to say, just from like, forget about, let's acknowledge the psychological side of this for a moment. It could be that this woman is traumatized by something they said or did, and she feels really oppressed by them, and they're the worst creatures Allah has created under the sun, and they have done her wrong beyond imagination. Let's just assume that that is the case, right? And she wants nothing to do with them. Technically, if someone's oppressed you, you have a right to say, "I want nothing to do with you." And your husband is supposed to be your shield. So if you're a guy listening to this and you're married and your wife feels that she's oppressed by your parents, you're supposed to be the best to your parents, but you don't have to throw your wife in front of them and create more conflict and all of that. You're supposed to, be the source of justice in that situation. That's fine. But at the end of the day, we families come together because the entire notion is humanity is more harmony is created through the institution of marriage, and people are supposed to find love and mutual respect. In Islam, we're even supposed to respect strangers. We're supposed to have the best relationship we can have with with neighbors, with والجانب بالجنب وابن السبيل. Like somebody who's on your Quran talks about somebody who's traveling alongside you, you should be the best to them. Have ihsan towards them. And here we have situations where families are at each other's throats, right? But I will say one thing. I don't care how much I hate someone. It doesn't matter how much I hate them. I am still Allah's slave, and the child that I have is still Allah's slave. And that child has a blood relationship with his or her grandparents. And I, as Allah's slave, cannot cut that relationship because it's not a relationship I created. I don't own my child. No mother owns her child. No father owns their child. That is a gift Allah gave you, and that child has independent rights as a slave of Allah. And you don't get to cut their connection to their grandparents because you hate your in-laws. You don't get, and if you're doing that, then watch out, because Allah talks about people وَيَقْطَعُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَن يُوصَلَ وَيُفْسِدُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. They cut what Allah has commanded to keep joined, and in doing so, they create corruption in the land. They create fasad. They create, evil in the land. And Allah is connecting this idea of cutting families apart. It doesn't just limit itself to family conflict. It creates chaos in society, broken people. Allah even says in Surah An-Nisa, He says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ. Have taqwa of Allah, in whose name you ask each other for things, and be mindful of the relationships of the womb. Yet for Allah's sake, like, you call on Allah for asking for things, and that same Allah who said, have taqwa of me, said, have taqwa of the relationships that are created by blood. And a relationship between a child and his or her grandparents is a relationship of blood. You don't get to cut it. You don't get to say, I'm really mad at them, and therefore my kids will have nothing to do with this one or that one, because those are not your relationships to cut to begin with. They're not. You can seek justice for what happened to you, but you cannot use your children as a pawn, as a means of torture, as a means of asserting your authority, and act like they are your property. You, no man should do this, no woman should do this. We should be mindful of Allah, And whatever conflict you do have, resolve it in a healthy way. But don't trample on what Allah has mandated and outstep your position as a slave of Allah. Maybe nobody can question you. And by the way, now I'm going to talk for a second to the husband. If your wife is doing that, right? First of all, I feel sorry that you're in that position because you have to be catering to her emotions and you have to be sensitive to how she feels. And she's telling you her side of the story. When you go to your parents, they're telling you their side of the story, and you're in the middle. Like if I just try to reason with them, if I try to reason with my mom or my dad, immediately they, right? And if I even try to reason with my wife just a little bit and say, hey, maybe you're being a little bit overreactionary, or maybe there's something that we should reconsider. Oh, you're always going to take your parents. I knew it. I should have known, right? So you're just going to get slammed on both sides because you're trying to be a person of reason. And so one of the quickest things you might do is, you know what, let me just avoid all this drama. I'm just going to give her whatever she wants and, not draw any boundaries, not talk about reason because I can't deal with these explosions in my life. I got too many other stresses. I got work, I got bills, I got, old and sick parents. I got so many other responsibilities. So I don't want any more drama in my life. So I'm just going to just let them do whatever they're doing. Just leave me out of it. And you leaving yourself out of it, you're thinking is going to create less stress in your life. Actually, you're going to create more stress in your life. You're going to create more drama in your life. Sometimes putting your foot down and saying, I love you, I respect you, I will always protect you, but those children deserve to see their grandparents. And that's not going to change. That actually is a loving but stern boundary because you're the Allah's rules in the house, right? Allah will ask you, and when you do that, when you speak straightforward, you think that that's going to create even more problems, right? But Allah's promise is what? Yuslih lakum a'malakum. Say the right thing, Allah will fix your situation. And I sympathize, and at some level I even empathize with men that are in this kind of horrible situation, and are feeling like they can't do anything right. Whatever they do, they are labeled as the oppressor. Either their parents say that they've abandoned them, or their wife says that they're no good as a husband and they're not protecting them. And they're just stuck in the middle being psychologically tortured. By the way, I know many men in that situation that turn to drugs and alcohol just because of that situation, or turn and find other vices. And I don't justify their vices, but that kind of anxiety and stress and shaming that has become normal, and men don't talk about it, and men are not, they're not allowed to even, they have no support network or system because we just say, oh, just have sabr. Or the only way to deal with it is become an oppressor yourself, right? That's the only way everybody will get put in check is if you just become a tyrant yourself. So then you'll be the biggest tyrant there. That way nobody gets to be a tyrant with you, right? Or just check out and go off and do whatever sins you want to cope with it. That's what the situation has boiled down to. So I pray that the men that are listening, the guys that are listening, whether pressure comes to you from your parents' side, or it comes to you from your wife's side, or it comes to you from your children's side, I hope that you're able to communicate bravely, clearly, without emotion, and you're able to stand by what's right no matter what someone else thinks and what someone else feels. Their feelings are not your priority. Doing the right thing and protecting them from even sometimes themselves is your priority. That same wife that you disagree with and say, no, they're going to see their grandkids. They're going to see their grandkids, and my children will see their parents. That's their right. That person may hate you right now, but on Judgment Day, they'll thank you for saving them from a sin. That's what's going to happen. So we have to take a step back, look at that situation, and really, honestly, just become brave and find the right kind of support network to be able to cope with these kinds of situations. One of the hopes I have in the future is actually for Muslim men in particular to have a space where they can discuss these things with each other, where they can find support with each other, because just like every human being needs emotional, psychological support, I recognize there's actually a huge gap for Muslim men to get the right kind of support that they need in the kinds of stresses and anxieties that they're going through in life, juggling all of the responsibilities, all of the pressures, and all kinds of expectations that are coming at them from every direction. So my du'as are with you, and I pray that you're able to navigate, crises in the family and other situations like it, and may Allah protect you all from fitna. Thanks a lot for listening.